Go ahead, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Star, you said there were 17 stairs, right?
Give or take a few, yes.
Did you count them?
Over time, yeah.
What do you mean, over time?
We stood there for a long time.
Well, I'm asking you, did you count the stairs?
Yeah.
How did you come up with the number 17?
I don't know.
Pardon me?
Most stairs like that have 17 stairs.
Most stairs like that have 17 stairs?
Well, most stairways like that have 17 stairs.
How do you know that?
Because my house has 17 stairs.
Did someone from the prosecution team tell you there was 17 stairs?
No, I just knew there were 17 stairs.
Did someone from the sheriff's department tell you there were 17 stairs?
No.
Did you actually count those stairs?
Yes.
When?
I don't know the exact date, but I remember counting them.
When you were at Neverland?
Yes.
And what was the purpose for counting them?
I don't know. I do that at every house I go to with stairs. I just count the stairs.
So you're a compulsive stair counter?
No, I just count the stairs.
Is that one of your hobbies also?
No, my other hobby's building airplanes, model airplanes.
In none of the police reports do you mention 17 stairs, correct?
No.
Before the grand jury, you never mentioned 17 stairs, correct?
Yes.
But you're saying years ago, you counted 17 stairs, right?
Yes, I just remember the number.
You did it just for fun, right?
Yeah, just happened to count them.
Okay, now, you gave an 8 feet figure. Remember that?
Yeah.
How did you figure out 8 feet?
I don't know, it looked like 8 feet, so I just said.
Did you measure that also?
No.
Okay, you just kind of guessed?
Well, I don't know. Yeah.
Did the prosecutor ever tell you 8 feet?
No.
Did any member of the sheriff's department ever tell you to say 8 feet?
No.
How many stairs are there in the main house leading to the kids' room?
Let's see, 6. I don't know exactly how.
You didn't count them?
No, they're not in a straight line, so I didn't count them. Laughter.
So when you count stairs, you only do it when they're in a straight line?
When they're straight.
Okay, you didn't count those stairs, did you?
I did count those stairs.
You mentioned you some rode ATVs, right?
Yes.
And you and your brother used to rode ATVs on the ranch, right?
Until someone got lost in the mountains, 22 so.
You actually rode those ATVs into Los Olivos one day, didn't you?
We never left the ranch.
Huh?
We never left the ranch.
Well, you were caught in Los Olivos with them, weren't you?
By who?
By someone who works on the ranch.
No, it's not true.
Never went off the property on the ATVs?
No.
Never were caught by anybody?
No.
Now, you were not supposed to be in the kitchen cooking, correct?
The cooks encouraged me to cook.
You were confronted by Kiki one time about you were not supposed to be in the kitchen, right?
No.
You don't recall that?
No.
You don't recall threatening Kiki with a knife when she confronted you in the kitchen?
No.
Never happened?
No.
Now, Prosecutor Sneddon asked you what you meant when you told the grand jury you hadn't seen Michael Jackson touch Gavin's genitals or penis. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And your response to Mr. Sneddon was, well, I was just talking about the dinner table, right?
Yes.
How come you never mentioned dinner table to the grand jury when you made that statement?
I don't know if they asked me.
Well, let me just go through what you said.
Okay.
Okay, Q. What kind of things? Fix his shirt. Q. What else? A. He looked like if you're standing in front of him, it looked like he's trying to fix his shirt. But it's hard to explain. But he would fix it, like he would touch. Well, it was weird. Q. He would be touching him a lot? A. Yeah, Q. Not his genitals, not his penis? A. I never saw that. But I saw it in the paper.
I don't know what I meant by paper, but I was trying to say that I didn't see it that time.
But you never mentioned any kitchen table, right?
But it wasn't the kitchen table.
But you never mentioned any table at all, correct?
I know.
When did you come up with that explanation?
Object. Argumentative.
Sustained.
Did you discuss with Prosecutor Sneddon that you were going to be asked that question?
No.
Have you ever discussed the statement you made to the grand jury about not seeing genitals or penis? Ever discuss that statement with Mr. Sneddon?
No.
Ever discuss it with any prosecutor?
No.
Ever discuss it with anyone in the sheriff's department?
No.
You don't mention that kitchen table in this context anywhere in the police reports, do you?
I don't know.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Assumes facts not in evidence as to, I won't say anything.
I don't think he knows what's in the police reports, so.
Okay, I'll rephrase it, Your Honor. In none of your police interviews do you ever make that statement and say, I'm limiting this to what I saw at the kitchen table, right?
That's what I'm objecting to. It assumes facts not in evidence as to the. I know you don't want me to speak, but.
I don't want you to speak.
All right, then.
I'll allow the question. I'll have it read back. Record read.
No.
And in none of your police interviews do you limit that statement about not seeing genitals or penis touched to any table, right?
No.
Today is the first time you ever limited that statement to what you saw at a table, correct?
Yes.
Now, you've indicated the first time you ever discussed any alleged inappropriate touching by Michael Jackson was with psychologist Stanley Katz, right?
Yes.
And you have admitted that you gave Stanley Katz a different description than you've given in this courtroom, right?
Yes.
In fact, you never mentioned the third event that you've described today to Stanley Katz?
Because I might have forgot about it.
No further questions.
Mr. Sneddon, 5.
Star, with regard to the table that you're talking about, was it the kitchen table?
It was the dinner table.
And there's a difference in that particular residence between the kitchen table and the dinner table, correct?
Yes.
And when you were asked this question at the grand jury, correct?
Yes.
And you were asked by Mr. Zonin?
Yes.
And he was asking you about Mr. Jackson fiddling with your brother's shirt?
Yes.
Is that the only occasion that you saw him fiddling with his shirt?
Yes.
And that was in response to Mr. Zonin's question?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Gavin Arvizo, Your Honor.
When you get to the witness stand here, please remain standing.
Yes, sir.
Face the clerk here. Raise your right hand.
Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
Gavin Anton Arvizo.
Will you spell your name, please?
Gavin Anton Arvizo.
Thank you. 23.
Okay. I'm going to have to ask you to lean right into that mic and talk loud so we can all hear what you have to say. All right?
All right.
Do you recognize the defendant in this case?
Yes.
Who is that?
Michael Jackson.
Did you know Mr. Jackson for a while?
Yes.
All right. Gavin, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, how old are you?
Right now, I'm 15 years old.
And what's your date of birth?
December 2nd, 1989.
And do you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes. One brother and one sister. And right now I have one half-brother. One big brother.
And your mother's name?
Janet. Well, I guess her name right now is Janet Jackson.
And your stepfather's name?
Jay Jackson.
And your father's name?
David Gavino Arvizo.
Do you have a sister?
Yes.
His name, her name?
Davellin and Arvizo.
And you have a brother?
Yes.
Another brother?
Star David Arvizo.
And you said you have a half-brother. I'm assuming you mean
Jet.
Jet?
Yes.
Now, when you were growing up and you started school, do you remember what school you started at?
Well, I think the first school I went to is a school called Durfee. And then I went to a school called Norwood.
You got to lean into the mic?
I think the first school I went to was Durfee, and it was when I was 4 years old. And the teacher said I wasn't, old enough to go to school, and I had to go to kindergarten to another school when I was 5, something like that.
When you were, say, from kindergarten through the 3rd or 4th grade, where were you living?
I was living at my grandmother's house, and then we moved to East LA.
And do you remember the street in East LA that you moved to?
Soto.
And when you lived on Soto Street, who did you live with at that place, in the beginning?
I lived with my biological father David and my mom Janet.
And what about your brother and sister?
My brother Star, and my sister Davellin.
And can you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what the inside of the place that you lived at on Soto Street was like?
It was one room, and then we had a kitchen, there was a hallway and we had to put all our appliances and stuff in there. And we had one restroom, and one closet, so it was like a bachelor apartment.
And where did you sleep in that room?
We slept when you would open the door, we would put our bunk beds right there. But then later we didn't have any more bunk beds, and then we all slept on one bed together.
Now, during the time that you were living on Soto Street in your, let me ask it this way. At some point did your father leave?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I was at my grandmother's house when it happened. But my mom told me that something happened where she wanted to take my sister and my brother to go to, a park or something, and he got angry and he left.
Now, did you ever see your father after that?
No.
During the time that your mother and father lived together and you lived with your mother and your father, okay?
Uh-huh.
How would you describe the nature of their relationship?
Well, they would fight every day, about where we lived and, bills and whatever.
You got to lean in there?
They would fight about bills, and his family, and our family. Well, my mom's mother and father, and their cousins and they would fight about his family, you know what I mean?
Did you ever see any physical abuse?
Yeah.
By whom?
My dad would hit my mom sometimes. I saw him one time grab a fire hydrant and my mom tripped over a cart, it was a black cart that was about that tall.
What did you use the cart for?
Used it for grocery shopping. It broke really easy, though, and my mom tripped over it because my dad was about to hit her with a fire hydrant.
Do you mean, a fire hydrant? Do you mean
It was a fire hydrant about that big, about that tall. They had them in our apartment.
Okay. Were you ever struck by your father?
Yeah.
How many times were you struck?
Well, I was not hit as much as my mom was, but I got hit sometimes.
How about your brothers and sisters?
I saw him hit my brother a lot, in his head. He, and my sister sometimes, too, he slapped her.
During the summer one time, did you ever attend a comedy camp?
Yes.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about that?
When I was 8 years old, my mom found this flyer, and she always thought that I was, kind of funny. So she wanted me to go to this comedy camp that was at a comedy club, and it was called Laugh Factory. And so I went there, and Jamie would have comedians come, and then they would teach us and we would take notes and stuff. And then, toward the end, when we have our graduation from comedy camp, we each had our own coach for each person, and my coach was George Lopez.
Now, you used the name, Jamie. Do you know Jamie's last name?
Masada.
And did he become a family friend?
Yeah, he's really close. When I had cancer, he would always visit me. And he would feed me food, because I didn't really want to eat, because the chemotherapy makes you always nauseous and always want to throw up. And it got to the point where I got to, 68 pounds. And Jamie would feed me pineapple and melon and stuff.
Now, when you were at the comedy camp that summer, okay, did you have somebody that you admired as a comedian?
Uh-huh.
Who was that?
Jay Leno.
And did you ever talk to anybody about Jay Leno?
Yeah.
Who? Just tell me who first.
Jamie.
Okay, go ahead.
At the comedy camp, I would always ask Jamie if Jay Leno was ever going to come, if Jay Leno's going to come and teach us, come to the camp, because I really liked him. Jay Leno was my favorite comedian. But he never came to the camp.
At some point in time, you learned, you became ill, correct?
Yes.
And when you became ill, what was the first thing that you realized that something wasn't right with your body?
Well, my stomach was hurting a lot, like it felt like there was a knife in your stomach. And I couldn't sleep at night. I would put my pillow in my stomach, because it really hurt. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and lifted up my shirt, and I saw there was a big bump, like my lower left torso.
Okay.
And my grandmother came, and she saw it, and she told my parents. And a couple days later we went to the hospital, and they told me, the doctors were saying, like, it's an inflamed spleen or it's this and that. They weren't really saying it was cancer yet.
When you went to the hospital for the first time and they examined you, did they put you in the hospital on that date?
Yeah, and then I had a surgery that same week on Thursday. So we went there on Monday, I think, and then surgery was on Thursday.
When did you personally learn that you had cancer?
It was before my surgery. They were very open. They didn't try to hide it from me that I had cancer. The surgeons came in and they talked about it, and they said what the cancer was. And they said how they were going to take it out, and they were going to need to take out this, they're going to need to remove the cancer. And then Thursday they did the surgery. And they didn't just have to take out the cancer, they had to take out my spleen and my left kidney, because the cancer was eating away at my spleen and my kidney.
Now, after you came out of surgery, did you remain in the hospital for some period of time?
Yes.
How long? Do you remember?
A few weeks, I guess.
During that first period of time after the surgery and you were there for 2 weeks, did you have any visitors?
Yeah.
Who was that?
Like my old coach, George Lopez, came, and he visited me. Jamie would visit me. And then Louise Palanker would visit me. My grandparents would visit me a lot. George Lopez would always bring me shirts and stuff, because a lot of my clothes didn't fit me anymore. And Jamie would buy me these little toys that I could play with. Jamie would always say I remember hearing him say to my parents actually, to always keep him happy. Always keep him happy.
Now, did you become friends with George Lopez?
Oh, yeah, he was like a brother to me. He was very close and caring about everything that happened with my cancer.
Are you still close to Mr. Lopez?
No, not really.
What happened?
Well, I heard about something that happened between my biological father and George Lopez. There was a confrontation where he went to one of his clubs, not one of his clubs. One of his shows at a club, and...
Between who?
My biological father David and George.
After that, did you have any contact with Mr. Lopez?
No.
Was that after your cancer had gone into remission?
Yes, I believe so.
So Mr. Lopez was there for you during the time you were having cancer?
Yeah, he was always there for me. He would always call and talk to me, call me and say that always be happy. He'd cheer me up when I was sad and stuff.
Now, during the time that you were in the hospital with cancer, did you ever have a conversation with regard to some people that you would like to meet?
Yeah.
Now, at the time that you made the request to meet these people. What was your condition at that point in time in terms of whether you thought you were going to live or die?
Well, when I had cancer, I never thought I was going to die. I never even thought about that. I always thought about, getting done with the chemo and going to school again, you know what I mean?
Did the doctors tell you something different?
Yeah, there was one time that they thought I was sleeping in my bed, and they were talking to my mother and my biological father. And my doctor told them to prepare for my funeral. And that if the cancer didn't kill me, the chemotherapy would. Because the chemotherapy is toxic and they were giving me adult dosages.
So who did you make the request of to meet some people while you were undergoing cancer treatment?
Jamie.
And who did you ask to see?
Well, I asked. Like every time I would watch Jay Leno's shows Jay Leno was a really nice comedian, and I always wanted to meet him. And I thought he was like the coolest comedian. And then Louise Palanker and Jamie Masada knew that, and so they gave me his phone number. And I would call him up, and I would ask him if he could come and visit me or he could give me his phone number so I could call him, and I would leave messages.
Anybody else other than Mr. Leno?
Michael.
Okay. Anybody else?
Chris Tucker.
Okay. Were there any others? Were there others that you asked to meet but you didn't meet?
Oh, that I didn't meet? No, I don't think so.
Okay. Tell me about Mr. Tucker. How was it that you met Mr. Tucker?
He came to my first benefit that Jamie allowed me to have. And he was sitting there and talking to me, and he was talking to me about God and stuff, and that God's going to bless me and all this stuff like that. And then he wrote his phone number down on a napkin. He told me to call him and that we would hang out sometime. And then the next day I called him because it was Chris Tucker and he was really cool.
Okay. Did he come over?
I went over to his house.
How did you get there?
I think my dad drove me over the first time.
So you met Mr. Tucker at his house, the first time you met him in person?
Yeah, no, I met him in person the first time at the benefit. Like he was there. He was wearing like this white hat and white shirt.
During the time that you had cancer, did you become close friends with Mr. Tucker?
Yeah, he is.
Tell us what Mr. Tucker did to help you.
He was really close to me. Like, he would always, he took us to the Nickelodeon Awards like 2 years in a row. And he said, well, this is our tradition. We're always going to go to the Nickelodeon Awards. And he got really, we were really close. And, one night, on New Year's, I was feeling really sad because I had to be in the hospital, and I was watching the New Year's stuff. And so I called up Chris, and I asked him, hey, I just left a message. I didn't really talk to him in person. I said, Chris, man, I need my brother. I don't really have anybody here. And then he didn't call me back. But at 12 o'clock midnight, he was at my hospital. Well, actually, he was in the elevator coming up to my hospital room as New Year's rang out. And then he came up there, and we were I was all, oh, Chris. And he brought Asja, his girlfriend, and little Dustin, his baby. And then I didn't think they were going to come because New Year's already rang out and stuff. 10, 7, 5 seconds after New Year's, he was in my hospital room. And I was really happy, and, I don't know. And he said, well, it's not about looking at when it rings out. It's about being with the people you love. And that's one of the reasons I really like Chris and I got close to Chris.
Did Mr. Tucker take you any other places?
Yeah, he took me to Neverland a couple of times. He took me out there.
Alright. Any other places that you recall going with Mr. Tucker?
Oakland.
Oakland?
Yeah, to see.
What was the occasion?
Oh, because he knew I liked the Raiders football team, so he knew this guy. He knew one guy on the football team. I don't know his first name, but his last name is Pope. And he took me up there in his plane, and then we went and saw an Oakland Raider game. And I remember the Raiders played the Jets. And then the Raiders won that game. And we went into the locker room afterwards. I met a bunch of players and he signed a jersey that I had. So it was pretty cool.
Did you ever go to any Laker games with him?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
He had these pretty rich friends, and he would take me over there, and he would always have, front row seats to the Laker games, and they would take me. And then, Chris, one time Chris bought me a jersey, and we would always have those, I remember seeing, always go right when we come in, and it was the front row seats so you could see the line of the court. It was pretty cool.
Did you ever go in the locker room?
No, we went, it wasn't really a locker room we went to. It was kind of like a garage place, and then we saw, all the players. They were already dressed, leaving. And then I saw Shaq. His whole, it was like my head came barely past his waist.
Big guy, huh?
Yeah.
Are you friends with Mr. Tucker anymore currently?
Well, I don't know if he still wants to be my friend, but I haven't called him in a while. And he hasn't called me and we haven't really talked in a while.
Why?
I don't know. I guess because of all this stuff.
Now, you told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you had gone to a benefit. I think that's what you said. A benefit?
Uh-huh.
At the Laugh Factory?
Yeah, Jamie donated one of his nights for me. I think it was Thursday or something.
And was that a different night or the same night that you met Mr. Tucker for the first time?
I think that was the first night I met him was, actually, when I met Chris Tucker, I met him at a graduation for the 2000 class of comedy camp. Jamie invited me over there for that, and Chris Tucker was there. That wasn't when the benefit was. I just remembered that right now. It was then.
But did you meet him at a benefit?
I met Chris at the graduation for, 2000 comedy camp.
Alright. Do you know whether Mr. Tucker ever attended any of the benefits that Mr. Masada arranged?
Yeah, he came to my first benefit.
Now, were you at the benefit?
Yes, I performed in it.
Well, who else was there, from your family?
I had my doctor, Chris and all his friends. And Kobe was there. And he brought his girlfriend or his now wife. I don't know, it was a lady. Louise Palanker was there. A lot of people came, so?
And members of your family. Who was there?
My mom was there, and my biological father. Oh, I don't know if my mom was there. My biological father was there, I think.
Any of your brothers or sisters?
I'm pretty sure they were there.
Now, did you have occasion on that particular night to meet Kobe Bryant?
No. The first time I met Kobe Bryant was at one of the Laker games that Chris brought me. And they were all talking, in this hallway. It was like a really long hallway. It was all cement. And then Chris and, all these other guys were talking to Kobe and they were all leaning against the wall and they were all talking, and I was just sitting there because I was bored. They were all talking about, adult stuff.
Did you ever have a picture taken with Mr. Bryant?
Yeah.
Where was that picture taken at?
That was at my first benefit.
At where?
At the Laugh Factory.
Now, at any of these benefits, there were 2 benefits, is that correct?
Yes.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. Were there more than 2, or is that?
No, I'm pretty sure there was only 2.
And where was the second benefit?
At the Laugh Factory.
And do you remember how much time elapsed between the first benefit and the second benefit?
Probably a month maybe.
At the first benefit, or at the second benefit? Let's just go to the second benefit for a second. Just tell me what members of your family were at that benefit?
I don't know. Maybe. I guess my dad would be there.
Why?
Because he was the one that was always with me.
At either of these benefits, did you ever hear your mother ask for any money?
No.
Did you ever hear your father ask for any money at these benefits?
I wouldn't really see him asking for money, but I knew he would be the one getting the money.
How do you know that?
Because he would be the one talking to Jamie about that stuff.
During the time that you had cancer, was it necessary for the members of your family to do something with regard to where you stayed when you were not in the hospital?
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, they didn't want me to stay at the apartment anymore. And they wanted to also make me happy, and they knew I loved my grandma, so they had me go live with my grandma. But the problem was, I couldn't go to my grandma's house, because they didn't have a room that I could stay in that was clean, because I had to stay in a clean room. So Louise Palanker gave us some money so that we could fix up a room at my grandma's house. And they gave us money so I could get, linoleum tile floors, and, because I couldn't have carpet tea because it would be too dusty and bacteria could be there. And I didn't have a spleen, and I had, no white blood cells, so I could get sick, really sick, and get fevers and have to go to the hospital and stuff. That's why they had to put down linoleum floors. And then they painted the rooms all, this green color. And then they painted white because it was a different color. They got me a better bed and then they also found me a TV in my room.
Do you remember, how big was the TV?
It was probably about that big, indicating.
Okay. I'm a bad judge of distance there. About 3 feet?
I don't know.
Counsel, 3 feet? Depending whether they're shacks or not, I guess, huh? Okay. That's good. Alright. I'm going to show you some photographs?
Okay.
Hang on a second. Could we have the lights, Your Honor? Okay. Gavin, do you recognize the people depicted in that photograph?
Yeah.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and what the number is on that photograph?
It was 4 numbers. Exhibit number?
Yes?
49.
49. Okay. People's 49 in evidence. Who are those people?
All the way to the right is my little brother Star. And then that lady right there is Louise Palanker. And then that's my sister to the right of Louise Palanker. And then that's me.
And do you recall when that photograph was taken?
That was during our camp at Laugh Factory.
Do you know where the money came from to fix up your room?
I think it came from Louise.
Did you have a nickname you used to call her?
Wheezy. Wheezy.
Okay. Why don't you turn that photograph over? And I think the next one is 199, is that correct?
Yes.
Alright. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
And is that you in that photograph?
Yes.
Do you recall where you were when that was taken?
I believe that was in my first benefit. And then at the Laugh Factory.
Okay. Why don't we turn over? Let's go to the next photograph, if we could. Do you recognize that?
Yeah.
And the number on that photograph is. Look on the exhibit, if you would. 26A 337. 337. Okay. Do you recognize that person?
Yeah, that's me.
And where was this taken, this photograph?
This is in a room that Louise got me, the room that Louise paid for so that I could have it.
This is what it looked like after they fixed it up?
Yeah.
Alright. Thanks, Gavin?
Alright.
Alright. We can turn the lights back on, Your Honor. Thank you. Gavin, at some point in time, did you have some contact with the defendant in this case, Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how that happened?
I'm not sure who exactly got Michael to call me. But one night, it was either Jamie or this lady named Carol Lemire. One day when I was in the hospital, Michael called me up. Well, someone called me up, and I was like, who is this?
Lean into the microphone, please.
Someone called me in my hospital room, and I asked who was this. And then they said they were Michael Jackson.
And did you believe them?
Well, yeah.
And how long did the conversation last?
That was a pretty short conversation. It was only about, 5 minutes long.
Now, did you have other conversations with Mr. Jackson?
Yeah.
How many do you think you had? Let me ask you this. Let's do it this way. At some point in time, were you invited to go to Mr. Jackson's ranch at Neverland Valley Ranch?
Yeah.
Between the time you received the first telephone call from the person identifying themselves as Michael Jackson until you went to the ranch, how many calls did you think you had between you and Mr. Jackson?
There was only one call, because the first time that he called me, he invited me up to the ranch, said he wanted me to come down.
Were you undergoing chemotherapy at this time?
Yes, I was in the middle of a round of chemotherapy.
During this conversation with Mr. Jackson, was a date set for you folks to go there, or how was it that the date was set for you to go?
He just said that he wanted me to come down. And then I'm not sure how it got set up, but he was telling me about my cancer, and talked to me about that he wanted me to go to his ranch and stuff like that. I don't know how it got set up to go up there. I think they talked to my parents or something.
During the time that you had cancer, did you have other telephone calls with Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Could you give us an estimate of how many calls that you had from him?
I don't know, 20 maybe, 20 calls.
Were some of them quite lengthy?
Yeah.
Were they all in the hospital?
No.
Where were you when you had other calls with Mr. Jackson?
My grandma's house.
Now, you said that you were invited by Mr. Jackson to go up to his ranch?
Uh-huh.
And had you ever heard of Mr. Jackson's ranch prior to that?
No. After when he, called me and said, ranch, I thought it was like a ranch with horses.
So how did you get up to the ranch?
There was a limousine that came to my grandma's house and then we went up in a limousine.
And who went up there?
It was me, my mom, my biological father, my sister, my brother and me.
And do you remember about, was it daylight or was it dark when you got there?
It was daylight.
And do you remember what happened when you first got there?
Yeah, I guess they told Michael we were up there already. And he had a bib on, because he was eating. And then he ran out and he greeted us and he had, a red shirt on, a black tie.
Alright. Did you have any conversation with Mr. Jackson at that time, during the greetings?
Well, he just said hi to us, because he had to go do something.
So where did you go after Mr. Jackson went to do something?
I think we ate.
Alright.
I guess.
What did you do after that?
We went and saw the unit that he put us in. And then they were afraid, my dad was kind of afraid of putting me on rides, because he thought maybe, because of my surgery, I might, rupture something or whatever. And then, but I eventually talked him into letting me go on rides, and we started going on rides and stuff.
At the amusement park?
Yeah, at the ranch.
Now, Let's go back just a moment. Okay? You said that you were placed in some room somewhere to stay. Where? Where were those located in relationship to the main residence?
They were like 50, 100 yards away from the main house, and that's where they put, like, all our bags and stuff.
All the what?
All our bags. All in the place where we were staying. They put all our bags in those rooms.
The room that you stayed in, who stayed in that room with you?
Well, the first night I didn't really stay in that room. But the person that was supposed to stay in that room was me and my brother.
And where was your mother and your sister?
My sister stood in the guest, a queen-sized room or something. No, I think me, my brother, and my sister was going to stay in one room, and then my mom and my biological father were going to stay in another.
Do you remember any incident while you were at Neverland Ranch on this first visit involving your mother and your father?
Yeah.
What happened?
They kind of got in a fight again, and my mom had makeup on and my dad made fun of her and said she looked like a clown, and then my dad got a cup of soda and threw it in her face.
Now, after you got to Neverland Ranch, before we go to the next day or to that night, did you ever ride any of the carts, the motorized carts there?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I couldn't really ride one yet because Michael said, like, I had to go through his driving test to see if I could drive the carts. And then I could drive them. So.
What did the test amount to?
Just make sure I wouldn't crash it. I knew how to, like, drive it and not run into things.
And did you ride in one of those carts?
Yeah.
Was somebody with you?
Well, when, like, riding, those times when I was riding it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What do you mean? That one time?
Yeah, in the beginning?
I had to take his test first. So Michael was in the car with me. And it was in his cart, like a black one with doors and, like, it's all covered up.
And what about your brother, Star?
I didn't really see when he got his test, but my brother would ride in one, too.
Alright. When you were at Neverland Ranch, was there ever an occasion where you slept in Mr. Jackson's room with Mr. Jackson?
Yeah.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how it came about that you ended up sleeping with Mr. Jackson in his bedroom?
I think we were in his office. We were all talking.
Who's we?
Me, my brother and Michael. We were all in his office, and we were talking. And then Michael said we should sleep in his room. And then I was like, okay, yeah, because we were, like, wanted to sleep in his room, too. And then he told us to ask in front of our parents if we could sleep in his room. So I think it was like at dinner, we asked our parents if we could sleep in Michael's room, and then so we did. And then my parents said yeah, it was okay.
So when you say, we, who else went with you?
My brother.
Now, at some point that night, then, you go into Mr. Jackson's bedroom?
Yes.
What were you doing in there? Do you recall?
Well, it started out, like, we were going to watch some Disney cartoons, and a bunch of these videotapes of The Simpsons. And then Frank Tyson had a computer. I don't remember whether it was my computer or his computer, in there.
Okay, tell us what happened?
And then he set up the computer. And then Frank started doing stuff on the internet. And then they started looking up, like, adult material sites.
Where? Was Mr. Jackson there?
Yeah.
Was Mr. Jackson involved in that?
Yes.
And in what way?
Well, he was, like, pointing out girls. Like, oh, I like her. And then, but, I mean, he wasn't typing. Frank was typing.
So how long do you think? How many different sites do you think you went to?
Maybe, like, 7 sites. We didn't go to that many sites.
And how long do you think you were doing this?
I don't know. Maybe, like, 15, 30 minutes. Something like that.
I couldn't hear you.
I think maybe, like, 15, 30 minutes or something.
And you described it as adult materials. Can you tell us whether it was male or female?
It was female.
Can you tell us about the age, in your estimation, the age of the females that you saw?
Maybe, like, 15 to, like, 25 years old.
So between that range?
Yeah.
Now, during the time that you were seeing the bailiff tells me that I'm to ask you to scoot closer to the microphone. And we all do what the bailiff says. Okay?
All right.
So lean into it and talk into it just like I am. Okay?
Alright.
Perfect. Now, during the time that you were in the room going through these sites on the computer, did Mr. Jackson say anything?
Yeah.
Tell the jury what he said?
Like one time we were, like, looking at the site, and there was this girl with her shirt up. And Michael says, like, it was all quiet and stuff, and Michael was like, got milk? And we started laughing because he said that.
Okay. Did he say anything else?
Like, Paris and Prince were sleeping in his bed. And then Michael leaned over to Prince in his ear and he said, Prince, you're missing all the 14 pussy.
Did he spell it?
No.
During the time that you became acquainted with Mr. Jackson, did you have a nickname that he used?
Well, it wasn't really a nickname just for me. Like, he would call all the kids that came to his ranch that. It was either like, Doo-Doo Head, or Applehead.
So he would call you either one of those two things?
Yes.
And do you recall whether he had a nickname for your brother?
Yeah, like, we were trying to make up nicknames one time. He has a video library. And then we made up one for my brother, Blowhole.
Did your sister Davellin have a nickname?
No.
After you visited the ranch on the occasion that you described, just describe to us, okay, did you go back to the ranch?
Yeah.
Did you go back to the ranch?
Yes.
Who did you go back with?
My biological father.
And do you recall how many times you went back?
Maybe, like, 7, 10 times, something like that. I mean.
Do you remember a time when you went back to the ranch and there was a video taken of you and Star with Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
And do you recall on that particular occasion when the video was made, like how many, where on these trips was that? In the beginning, the middle or the end? Where was it?
It was really toward the beginning.
And did your mother go with you on any of those trips?
No, I think she, like, didn't come with me after the first time.
How about your sister?
I don't think she did either, because she was at school. Between that and to Miami, or.
Yes?
When I had cancer.
Yes, between that and Miami.
Okay.
Was there, let me put it this way, was there a time when you went back to the ranch with Chris Tucker?
Yes.
Okay, so let's just use that as a point in time. All right?
Okay.
From the time you went there for the very first time with your whole family, when Mr. Jackson invited you, to the time when you went back with Mr. Tucker, okay, for the first time?
Okay.
How many times had you visited the ranch?
Maybe, like, 7 times probably.
And during those times, during that period of time, was your mother ever with you, other than the first time?
No.
How about your sister?
No, I don't think so.
The video that shows you and Mr. Jackson and your brother Star, when you're wheeled around in the wheelchair.
Uh-huh.
Did anybody tell you why they were doing that?
No, Michael just said he wanted to make a video and keep it, of me and him.
During the time from when, the first time you went to the ranch that you've described to us to the time that you went there with Mr. Tucker. Okay. During that, I think you said 7 times. How many of those times was Mr. Jackson actually present on the ranch?
Maybe twice.
And on those occasions when Mr. Jackson was on the ranch, did you have any contact with him?
Those 2 occasions, yeah. But, I mean, like, sometimes I would go up to the ranch and he would say that he's not there, and then he would be there.
What do you mean by that?
Like, when I would have cancer. I don't know what happened, but Michael, like, kind of stopped talking to me and stuff, right in the middle of my cancer. And, like, I would go up there, and I would see, like, Prince and Paris playing there, and I would think that Michael was there, and they would tell me that Michael wasn't there. And then, like, I would see him somewhere, and, I don't know.
Was there one occasion when you actually ran into him by accident?
Yeah.
Tell the jury about that?
Well, I was playing with Prince and Paris outside, like in the back of the house near where the arcade was. And then we were walking into the main house. And I knew the code, because they would give me the codes. And then I walked in the door with Prince in my hand and Paris in my other hand, and we were holding hands. And then we walked into the house and there I saw Michael walking, like, toward me. But I guess he didn't see me turn the corner. And then he acted as if, oh, crap, you know what I mean? Like, he saw me. And then he just played it off and, like, acted like, oh, hi, Doo-Doo Head. You know, at the time I was kind of hypnotized and, like, he's my.
Objection. Calls for a narrative and non-responsive.
Sustained.
Okay.
And then, like.
That's all right. I'll give you a question. So in any case, you bumped into him?
Yeah, and I was, because of.
That's okay. How much more contact did you have with him on that time when you bumped into him? How much time did the contact last?
I didn't really see him through my cancer a lot.
I mean, you told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury there was an occasion where you were there when you kind of bumped into him by accident.
Yeah.
When you actually made contact with him. Okay. How long did that last? Just. How long was the conversation between the two of you?
Maybe, like, 5 minutes. When, that time we bumped into each other, and then we just talked about, and stuff, and he said he had to go somewhere.
Now, you mentioned that you. Well, let me ask you this. Did you ever have a phone number for Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, he gave me a lot of phone numbers.
I couldn't hear you.
Yes.
And how did you get those phone numbers?
Michael would give them to me, or Frank would sometimes.
And when did you get those phone numbers?
Toward the beginning.
Beginning of what?
Like, the beginning of my cancer. First or second time we went up to the ranch.
Was there a certain point in time when those phone numbers weren't working anymore?
Yeah, like.
Do you remember how long it was into your cancer when those phone numbers were no longer good?
Maybe, like, halfway through. Like, it seemed like he changed all his numbers, or the numbers that I called, he wouldn't pick up. And, or, like, Frank's cell phone wasn't, he wouldn't pick up. Frank wouldn't pick up his phone either. And.
Now, you told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that there was a time that you went back to the ranch with Mr. Tucker. Do you remember that? Do you remember when you went?
Yes.
Tell the jury when it was you went?
I don't know. It was for his little son's, Dustin's birthday.
And who went with you?
Me, my now dad Jay, and I think my mom went, and my brother and my sister, and they had his birthday party there.
Were there other times that you spent on the ranch with Mr. Tucker?
Yeah.
And how long do you think you were there with Mr. Tucker?
With Dustin's party?
Yes?
I don't know. It was just a day thing. We went up there for one day and then we came back.
You came what?
I think we just went there for that and then came back home.
Were there other occasions when you were up there with Mr. Tucker?
Yeah, one other time.
And how long did you stay on that occasion?
We stood there for, like a week or, maybe a week and a half, something like that.
Was Mr. Jackson there on the day of Mr. Tucker's son's birthday?
No.
And when you went back and stayed for about a week or a week and a half, was Mr. Jackson there?
With Chris?
Yes?
He was there, like, for a few days. I believe that was when the Martin Bashir thing happened.
I'm sorry?
I believe that was when the Martin Bashir thing happened.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Martin Bashir. Were you introduced to a person by the name of Martin Bashir?
Yes.
And where were you introduced to the person by the name of Martin Bashir?
In Michael's living room, in his main house.
And who introduced you to Mr. Bashir?
Michael.
Now, how did you get to the ranch?
I think Chris drove me up that time. And then, in his bus.
And did any other members of your family go with you?
It was only me, my sister and my brother.
And did you know why you were going to the ranch?
Michael wanted me to go up there, and then I think I called Chris. Because I would always tell him that we never went up there, like together. We'd never been at the ranch together with Chris. He would go up there one time, and I would be at home. And then I would go up, and he would be home. So we said that we'd all go there together. So we all went up there, and Chris took us up there.
When you got there, let me go back in point in time. Did you have a conversation with Mr. Jackson before you went up to the ranch for the Bashir thing? Meaning Mr. Bashir, within, let's say, days of that?
Michael told me that he wanted me to go up to the ranch, but that's when he wanted me to go with, well, that's when it was set up with Chris, but I mean before that, I didn't talk to him in a very, very long time.
So when you said Mr. Jackson told you he wanted you to go up to the ranch, how did that communication occur between you and Mr. Jackson?
I don't know. He called my house, and he kind of said he was trying to find me or something.
Alright, So you go up to the ranch and you meet Mr. Bashir. When you got to the ranch, what was the first thing that happened?
Well, he put our bags away. And then I went into the main house. And Michael took me to the main house.
Who did?
Michael.
The defendant?
Yes.
Okay.
And then introduced me to Martin Bashir.
Alright, what happened then?
He told me.
Who's he?
No, actually, I don't think that's the first thing that happened. I think he started talking to me about what was going to happen and stuff. Like, he was telling me about another young man that was a burn victim. And he was telling me about how he helped him or whatever.
Who's this? Who's the he?
I don't know.
No, who was talking to you?
Michael.
Okay.
And then.
Where were you when you had this conversation?
I think we were driving in one of the carts. And then he was telling me that he was filming something or something like that.
Alright, did you at some point go inside?
Yeah.
Did you have any other conversations with Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, that's when he introduced me to Martin Bashir.
Any other conversation with Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, like, he introduced me to Martin Bashir, and then he took me, I think it was in the library where he took me. And then he was telling me, hey, you want to be an actor, right? And I was like, yeah, I want to be comedian though. And then he was like, but you can act too, right? And then I was like, yeah, well, I'm going to put you in the movies. And this is your audition. Okay? And I was like, oh, all right. And he told me, okay, I want you to go in and then tell them about how I helped you. And he told me to, like, make sure, tell them about, like, this and that, and about, that you call me dad, or, daddy, or.
Objection. Non-responsive. Calls for a narrative.
Your Honor, this is the conversation.
Well, it is narrative, though.
Alright.
Sustained.
Was there anything else said during the conversation?
He told me that he wanted me to say certain things on the videotape.
What did he tell you to say on the videotape?
He told me to say that he helped me, and that he pretty much cured me of cancer.
Did you do that? On the video?
Yeah.
Was it true?
Not really, because during my cancer, he wasn't really even there. I mean, the real people, it's like, the real people who were there were George Lopez, because he would always visit me in the hospital like every day, and he would bring me shirts and stuff. Chris Tucker would always visit me in the hospital. Louise Palanker would come and we'd make jokes because, like, I wasn't good at smelling stuff. Chemotherapy would clear out everything. And then Fritz Coleman would always come with Louise and talk to me, and.
At this point in time, when you went up to the Bashir video.
Yeah.
To the Bashir interview, okay?
Uh-huh.
Did you admire Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, I was like.
What was your attitude towards Mr. Jackson at this point in time?
I thought, like, he was the coolest guy in the world. He was like my best friend ever. Do you know what I mean?
So you had a genuine affection for Mr. Jackson at this time?
Yeah, I really liked him. He was like, I don't know, he was just, like,
So during the course of the interview with Mr. Bashir, okay. After that interview was completed, alright?
Uh-huh.
Tell us what happened after the interview was completed. Was there any other filming that went on that day?
No, I don't think so.
Do you know whether or not your brother and sister ever got their picture taken in the filming?
Well, yeah, there was one time that I saw on the tape that they filmed us. I didn't even know the camera was on. And they were inside of the kitchen and my sister and brother were there. And me and my brother were showing Michael a marching cadence from one of the programs that we were in that we had learned.
Okay. What was the marching cadence from, what program?
It's from a program called the United States Naval Sea Cadets.
And what was the situation of you learning this cadence? Just part of the training?
Yeah, it was part of the basic training that we went to.
How long was the basic training?
2 weeks ago.
Where was it?
He went to a Navy Leaguer boot camp, and it was for, like, younger kids. And then I went to a Sea Cadet boot camp. It's harder and it's for older kids.
Now, did you know at the time that Mr. Bashir was interviewing you with Mr. Jackson, the defendant in this case, did you know that that video was going to be shown around the world?
No, Not at all. I thought it was another thing like he had filmed before, like him carrying me across the bridge, that video. I thought it was going to be another thing like that, like he was going to, put it away somewhere and keep it just for himself.
Had there been other instances on the ranch where you had been filmed with Mr. Jackson, other than the one with him carrying you across the bridge, and the one with Mr. Bashir, that you recall?
No.
Now, after the filming was over, do you recall seeing Mr. Jackson at all, after that?
After the film? After the Martin Bashir thing?
Yes?
Well, I think he left, the next day. And me and my brother and my sister, stood up there, and we were, swimming and stuff.
Did you have any contact with Mr. Jackson after the filming?
No. The same thing happened. The phone number they gave me while I was up there wasn't working no more.
It's a bad question on my part. While you were at the ranch for the Mr. Bashir filming and after the filming was over with but before you and your brother or your sister left, did you have any contact with Mr. Jackson at all?
No. The day after the filming, he left the ranch and went somewhere.
So where did you spend the night after the Bashir film?
In our unit that they gave us.
Your Honor, this would be a good place to stop. If you want me to go on.
All right. I've decided that if I have to go to the restroom, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, I have an important call. Laughter. See you tomorrow at 8:30.